Hello, good day. Before I check out what you got, can you answer me a question?
Yeah, I guess so. What's on your mind?
When I entered your town, I saw a bunch of hanging cages. A few looked like they still had some bones in them.
That's what you get if you're a raider in these parts.
I've seen plenty of them executed. But why the hanging cages? Never seen that before.
An old tradition, long before I came here. They say the first raider they hanged fancied himself a pirate from the pre-war stories.
I was born in a small seaside settlement. I remembered hearing many stories about Captain Kidd Morgan, centuries before the bombs dropped.
Normally I wouldn't have time for a story, but business is slow this afternoon. Could use a break.
If it's a good one, there'll be some caps in it for ya.
I actually have some copies of some old holotapes. They say he was a vault dweller. Might be complete horse shit, but here goes.
I still remembered the commercial for Jolly Jim Rogers. 6 locations in the greater Charleston area. The jingle went something like, "If it's a fish you wish, then migrate down to the pirate. That can't be beat." It used to say when it was just the first location. When he was a kid. Was pretty decent seafood for the price. That expansion meant profit margins, and soon it was more alley cat than crab. More stray dog than lobster. The business changed hands to Jim Rogers Jr., and it became a franchise. So lo and behold, I had Jim Rogers, the third on my doorstep at the vault. A recent graduate of Vault Tech University. He had gotten pretty good grades and dual tracks on small business management and food production. We'd probably need the second more than anything in the vault. He had interned both with his own father and Richard Clayton with Clayton Farms producing potatoes and other things to the restaurants. I actually had sampled some of the meals he prepared at Vault Tech, and they really weren't half bad. Better than you ever got in his family's restaurants. While he was a bit of a brat, given his family, he wasn't all that bad in those months leading up to October. He had wanted to go into the Navy like his uncle and grandfather, but his father had other plans for him. It was actually rather helpful with checking over our long-term food stores. Caught a few mistakes or exceptions that even escaped me. He had his father cater a meal a few weeks before that fateful day. It was a good way to test out our responses to food poisoning. When I made the announcement on that morning on October 23rd, he was quiet. But I knew his family was gone. The depression came slowly to him as it all sank in. But then, his behavior started to change, for the worse. He became a regular delinquent. Spotty appearances for training, an earring here, a crude tattoo there. I knew it was trouble when I started catching him hanging out with Michael, before he really took to the name Maniac. He was still a skinny kid then. Maniac was definitely the one in charge. Few years later he had pumped up and could lay a beat down almost as good as, well, anybody. He could take a good beating too, from Jerry, even from Bruno, but it didn't do any good. He became the liaison between Wet Willie, Maniac, sometimes Jerry, and even Annabelle. I started treating him like he was really in the Navy, light rain duty, mopping floors. He begrudgingly tolerated it. When Maniac started spending a lot of time in the cells, he was his regular, almost dutiful visitor. However, while Maniac was nearly useless in his duties, Jim had become an avid cook, could do a lot with our limited food stores. I sent him to substance abuse counseling as his drinking increased by a magnitude. Didn't do much, but Zeke insisted he was listening, even if he acted like he wasn't. When I allowed Wet Willie to take over one of the lounges, he offered to become his first customer, and one of his bartenders. He had slowly taken on a pirate persona, of a fashion. I have to say his knowledge of sea shanties, and filthy insults was impressive. Frankly, he was like dealing with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Useful and friendly hand in the kitchen one moment, and then breaking somebody else's hand the next. He was rather fond of shooting and was one of the better shots in the vault. He preferred antique weapons and fashioned a number of modern recreations. One of his more unique creations was a 4-barrel black powder weapon. The name escapes me though. He had a few bit roles on the New Adventures of Lara Darling, mostly a recurring pirate villain by the name of Shetty Sam. Our last night in the vault, drinks, the Tempest, a busy night at Wet Willie's. And out of nowhere there was Jim Rogers, reciting The Highwayman by Alfred Noyes. A haunting serious tone to his voice. He feared the next day as much as the rest of us. He was sleeping it off the next morning when I left. But as I walked out of the vault, that final time, I remembered old maps mentioning, "Here be dragons." A year later as I walked back to Sutton, I didn't wonder whatever or not he survived. I wondered what strange tales he had for me, like old sailors coming back from a long voyage. He walked through my door with a bushy black beard. Looked like he hadn't slept at all in that year. But his mood was, strangely, happy. He offered me some leftover fried maralurk. I politely declined and we got down to business. When I told him of people returning to West Virginia, he happily regarded it by saying that a captain needed a crew. He didn't really care about rebuilding, but as he walked out, he said that history would remember Jolly Jim Roger.
I was born Jim Roger III, third in the line of glorified fry cooks. I really should say fry crooks, at least how my dad ran things. We just had two restaurants when I was born. My grandpa ran the original, my father ran the second. I remember when that preacher do-gooders had me at his so-called counseling session. One of his tactics would be for us to remember a simple time when we were truly happy. That time for me was when I was maybe 5 or 6. My grandpa and grandma. He had been in the Navy for well over a decade, sailed everywhere, or at least he claimed. He would pull my leg with tales of mermaids, selkies, and, best of all, pirates. It was a few years later I realized he had mostly been raiding from Robert Stevenson and others. But it was I remembered being on his knee and being amazed by his stories, an entire world of adventure. And here I was, at the steps of Vault 76, looking down that hill and seeing a whole new, perhaps, a brave new world. The words from last night's play ringing in my ears. Bailey had been wonderfully charming. I don't know why I decided to read a poem instead of telling the, usually, dirty jokes. I figured the communists had won when I saw Chinese talking sputters, but I guess they were as dead in this world as, well, anything else. I made it to a pond, used the lessons I had learned from Seth, Edgar, others. The water was radioactive to be sure, but only barely thus. I had some rat away, some rats. I should be fine. I ran into some kind of diseased, dying, I don't know what kind of person. They were in so much pain. I found some old guns, a machete, went to work. It looks like the old girl left me a trail. We all got older in the vault, but she was still a bit of a hot number. Many of us wondered who had gotten to her. We'd all brag, but none of us knew for sure. The trail led me into Flatwoods. Had been a piston town before the war, but had become perhaps a beacon of hope. I knew that voice from anywhere, off in the distance. Helga, the self-described kid queen, got bit on that finest by a two-headed cow. Not everybody decided the responders were a good idea. Bunch of them got betrayed, but it is the way of the world. I figured it wasn't a bad idea to learn from them, see where they went wrong at the very least. I decided to head up to Morgantown, spotted Maniac ripping off Little Eric. I passed a number of my old buddies, friends, family members, maybe, on the road up here. Somebody drew a dick on an iBot, spotted Eric drawing some pubic hair on it. I, of course, added an eye patch. A couple of us got a cargo bot to land. Can't believe Helga was sober enough for the task. I went exploring with Helga, picked off a couple up. I still don't know what they are. I'm still a decent shot. A powerful shot of Nugashine later, and I ended up fairly close to Charleston. Apparently Matty and others came up with a vaccine. I braved it and took the shot. At least I got a shot of whiskey out of it. I got a good workout from the Fire Brothers physical exam. Saw Helga throwing her fucking guts up. I ran through the burning mine with Maniac. Could beat up Eric in the vault, but ain't so tough in the real world. I'm headed up to that damn ski resort. I hope it's worth it. A robot, many, scorched. Fuck my life. David Thornton, I remember the name. Bigwig businessman, started a group of raiders. Do what you need to survive. The cutthroats apparently split up into different gangs. Blackwater bandits, trappers, diehards, gourmands. I could be a raider gang leader. The Jolly Jims. No wait, that sounds like a brand of condom. I found some modern recreations. Black powder weapons, pistols, rifles. Maniac told me they couldn't hit shit. Then I put a shot mere inches from his foot as he walked away. This shit I did for Rose, and now I find out she's just a pal recreation of his lover. I saw Eric coming up the trail, programmed several robots to address him as penis breath. Rose thought it was great. I'm all done with Rose. I admit I started to like her. Crude sense of humor, loves booze, loves chems. Perfect call. The rednecks really loved our restaurant chain. Didn't care that half of it was cut up alley cats and stray dogs either. I guess the Free States also had brains. A detection network could give us an upper hand on all this scorched shit. I spotted Billy down here in the mire. Still has a great body, but her face has seen better days. I overheard some fight between Eric and Helga. He was her slave down in the vault. Guess he's starting to grow a pair out here. I found an old advertisement for Jolly Jims down here in Harper's Ferry. The memories came flooding back. My father, he was an okay person but so focused on the business. Had a side piece, but he still treated Mom okay enough. I think things started to go south between them when they found out she couldn't have any more kids. My father and uncle were close brothers. Guess he had hoped that I'd have the same experience. I decided to follow Maniac into the camps. Met up with a lot of the vault survivors, but also so many who didn't survive. We tried to bring up people's spirits. Booze. So much booze. Some chems. And some singing. Don't know if it helped. I figured out the trick to making my alert taste less rubbery. Slow cooking. Fit an entire camp on it. A couple of us decided to try our hand at our old shooting contests. Me, Sav, Edgar, a few others. I showed off my black powder rifle. Just a point or two short of Sav's funnel score. After a while I headed off back into the mire. Discovered knights in power armor. They were an impressive bunch, and merely one drop in a larger sea no less. I followed their trail through the bog. Gent radioactive bats. On my. I took down my fair share of krakens, like sailors of old. A cavern of glass. Such a battle, one for the ages, one to be proud of. It had been a few days, weeks, since I was up at Camp McClintock. But the refresher courses that old Gutsy had given me paid off. I was secretly thankful. The shadow government. I wasn't surprised. The Enclave wondered if Dad had known, or was he such a little fish? Modus, I'm sure our relationship won't always be so cordial, but for now he's a Nexus Areaville. Annabelle has apparently taken charge. They are calling her the A-bomb, but sometimes even a captain has to take orders. Tomorrow we are headed down to finish this, once and for all. Not sure what I can pick off with my black powder guns, but I'm going to try or die. The battle was fierce, long and, well, hard. Sav lost an eye. Many aren't going to leave where they lay. I don't know what the coming weeks, months, hell, even years, will bring. But right now it's a decent bottle of rum and a campfire.